The vast North American wilderness of the late 18th century was a place of both stunning beauty and unbridled savagery. As the nascent United States pushed its boundaries westward, clashes between American settlers and the indigenous peoples who had called these territories home for centuries became increasingly common, often erupting in brutal violence. What you are about to hear is a chilling excerpt from the diary of John Tanner, a young boy captured by Native Americans in 1789 at the tender age of 9. His words paint a vivid and harrowing picture of frontier life and the brutal realities faced by those caught between the warring worlds, a testament to the raw, unvarnished existence on the edge of civilization. Back in the spring of 1789, our family had settled on the frontier of Kentucky, not far from what we called the Great Woods. We were a small community, isolated yet hopeful, striving to carve out a life from the dense wilderness. My father, a man of quiet strength and unwavering resolve, toiled tirelessly to clear our patch of land, his hands calloused from the axe, his gaze constantly sweeping the forest's edge. My mother, though gentle, possessed a fortitude born of frontier hardship, managing our small cabin and tending to my sisters and younger brother. We lived simply, our days dictated by the rhythm of the seasons and the constant need for vigilance. Tales of Indian raids were not whispers in the wind, but stark realities, shaping our routines and hardening our spirits. Each sunrise brought a fragile sense of security, each sunset, a renewed awareness of the ever-present dangers lurking beyond our meager defenses. Our little cabin, built with rough-hewn logs, felt sturdy enough against the elements, but flimsy, terribly flimsy, against the unseen threats that permeated the endless forest surrounding us. One particularly warm and quiet afternoon, when the sun hung high, casting long shadows from the towering trees, and the air was still save for the distant cry of a hawk, our world shattered. We were engaged in the mundane tasks of daily life, my mother at the hearth, my sisters gathering berries, my younger brother playing in the dust near the cabin wall. I, a boy of 9, was helping my father mend a fence at the edge of our clearing, the rhythmic thud of his hammer a comforting sound. Suddenly, a sound like thunder erupted from the woods, not distant, but terribly close. It was the terrifying roar of war cries, piercing the tranquility of the afternoon, a sound that instantly froze the blood in my veins. They descended upon our home with a terrifying, overwhelming suddenness. There was no time for defense, no chance to grab a weapon, no possibility of flight. They were upon us in an instant, a whirlwind of painted faces and raised tomahawks, their savage yells echoing through the trees, a primal chorus of destruction. My mother, my sisters, and my younger brother were seized, their cries abruptly silenced by the sheer force and terror of the attack. My father, bless his brave soul, fought with a desperate ferocity, grasping at his rifle, but he was quickly overwhelmed by their numbers. I watched, paralyzed by an unbearable fear, as they surrounded him, the glint of their knives in the sunlight, the terrifying speed and efficiency of their movements. Our images burned irrevocably into the deepest corners of my mind. I saw the unspeakable acts, the chilling culmination of their rage, as they tore the scalps from my family, one by one. The horror of that moment, the raw, visceral agony of witnessing such an atrocity, is seared into my memory, a burning, festering wound that no passage of time, no distance, no subsequent experience could ever erase. I can still hear even now with a clarity that haunts my waking hours and invades my dreams. My mother's final guttural scream, my sister's whimpers fading into silence, and the profound chilling still. This that descended upon our home in the aftermath of silence heavier and more terrible than any scream. It was the silence of obliteration. The warriors, their faces still contorted with a fierce intensity, yet seemingly unconcerned with my frozen, trembling presence amidst the carnage, then systematically ransacked our humble cabin. They moved with a practiced, predatory grace, taking what they pleased, tools, blankets, any meager provisions we possessed. I expected, in that moment of utter desolation, to be killed, to join my family in that final, silent rest, to be mercifully released from the waking nightmare. But instead, a strong hand gripped my arm, and I was roughly dragged away, a captive, a living trophy of their conquest. My terror was immense, a raw, screaming thing in my chest, a cold, suffocating blanket of dread. I was a small boy, barely more than a child, now utterly alone, surrounded by the very people who had just extinguished my entire world. Leaving only ashes and the lingering scent of blood, they marched me into the depths of the seemingly endless forest, away from everything I had ever known, every familiar sight, every comforting sound. Each step was a fresh torment, a stark reminder of the unspeakable acts I had witnessed. The emptiness within me, my heart ached with a profound, unceasing grief for my family, for the vibrant lives that had been so cruelly, so senselessly taken. I was now inexplicably a part of their world, a world of harsh survival, of constant vigilance, of ancient customs and fierce loyalties. A world where the shadows held both untold danger and a strange, bewildering new kind of freedom. The initial journey was long and arduous, a blur of physical exhaustion, relentless marching, and an ever-present, gnawing fear. I was given little food, little comfort, treated as little more than baggage, yet I clung to life with a desperate, primal tenacity. As the days bled into weeks, and weeks into months, they continued their relentless journey, traversing vast distances through dense woods and across wide plains. I was often hungry, sometimes cold, and always acutely aware of my precarious position. They observed me, tested me, subjected me to the harsh realities of their nomadic existence. Slowly, incrementally, almost imperceptibly, I began to adapt. The constant exposure to their language, their ways of living, their hunting techniques forced a transformation within me. I learned to understand their guttural speech, to recognize the subtle cues of the forest, to hunt, to track, to survive. The profound pain of my loss never truly departed a dull ache beneath the surface of my daily existence, but with each passing day, the sharp edges of my grief began to dull, replaced by a growing, albeit reluctant, awareness of my new terrifying reality. I was a captive, yes, bound by circumstance, but I was also, miraculously, a survivor. My diary, a collection of salvaged papers and stolen moments, became my silent confidant, the only place where I could attempt to record the truth of what I had seen, what I had endured, and the bewildering complexities of my new life. It was a testament to the unforeseen resilience of the human spirit, a chilling, often disturbing account of a boy who watched his family scalped, and yet somehow continued not just to live, but to learn to grow, to exist within the very culture that had shattered his childhood. The memory of that day, etched forever into the very fabric of my being, shaped the man I was to become, a man forever caught between two worlds, bearing the scars of both. The wilderness, in its brutal indifference, had stripped me of everything, yet in its unforgiving embrace, it had also bestowed upon me a strength I never knew I possessed, a fierce will to persevere against all odds. I learned to hunt with their bows and arrows, later with their traded muskets. I learned the rituals of their dances, the meaning of their sacred stories. I learned to read the signs in the forest, to find sustenance where before I would have starved. My identity shifted, blurred, as the language of my childhood faded and the words of my captors became my own. Each sunset brought the cold comfort of another day survived, each dawn, the stark reality of a life irrevocably altered, a boy transformed into something new, something forged in the crucible of tragedy and adaptation.